Hi there. Welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, bringing you tips and strategies on communication that will boost your business. And I'm not doing that solo because on the Biz Communication Show, I host someone who has truly mastered communication, and their tips and strategies will definitely boost your business and mine. Today, it's a great pleasure to welcome from Las Vegas, Nevada, Bruce Merrin, who for 5 decades has helped the stars shine brighter through his PR firm, Bruce Merrin Celebrity Speakers and Entertainment, representing hundreds of clients from sports, entertainment, politics, and the corporate arena. He works on a vital premise. As he puts it, the first two letters in profit are PR. His amazing client list includes hundreds of celebrity names we know, such as Neil Diamond, Celine Dion, Mariah Carey, Jackie Robinson, Sarah Brightman, the Supremes, and a host of other extremely talented headliners. Amazingly, he did not take decades to work his way to that level. Bruce started his business representing the A-list. Very soon, his clients were Michael Landon, Johnny Carson, and Ed McMahon, who welcomed his magnetic personality and unmatched promotional skills. And soon, he added another superstar to his client list, a guy named Elvis. And we don't need the last name. In the corporate arena, on his client list, you'll find Rolex, Rolls-Royce, Gucci, and many more luxury industry giants. He's a big fan of classic films. He adores the TCM TV channel. Somehow, Bruce finds time to fit tennis into his packed schedule, serving as captain of 6 Nevada championship teams in the 18 and older division. Again, Bruce Merrin helps the stars shine brighter, and he's done that for more than 50 years. Join me in welcoming the pride of Las Vegas, Bruce Merrin. Hello, Bruce.
Hello, and yes, a big welcome to everybody worldwide in Vegas. It's a beautiful day, about 85 degrees today, clear. Entertainment capital of the world, Bill. I love it. I love this city.
Well, you have helped make that city greater in entertainment, and you're 83 degrees. I think it was 43 here this morning, but we'll warm up as spring moves along. And I'm in a great locale, almost the mountain area of Northeast Georgia. Bruce, let's go back to the early beginning. Your father was president of the Flamingo Hotel, and as such, as a very young kid, you were attending shows by practically anybody and everybody who was a big name in that era and even later on. Give us a couple of examples of what those experiences were like and who you interacted with and heard their shows and talked with as a precocious kid.
Oh no, I'll be glad. We moved to Vegas when I was 12 years old. And because Dad was running the Flamingo Hotel, he was the executive vice president and general manager of the Flamingo. So Mom and Dad would take me every major Las Vegas show you can mention. But if I were to tell you, Bill, a couple of my favorites, and again, because it was my dad, we always were able to sit in the front row and then visit the celebrities after. My favorite in Vegas back in '56 at the Sands Hotel was Sammy Davis Jr. And Sammy really was instrumental in changing my life. We were sitting at his show in the front row. His signature song, Bill, was Mr. Bojangles. And after he sang that, he got a standing ovation, and we went backstage, and I shook his hand, Bill, and I said, Mr. Davis, I now know that I want to work in entertainment. That's how much, Bill, that he impacted my life. And, absolutely, even at that age, one of the greatest entertainers that I've ever seen, because, if we were to list greatest entertainers in Vegas, Sammy did everything. He sang, He was an impersonator. He danced like unbelievable. And, he was a very funny comic as well. So he combined everything together. So Sammy, it was the first time that I said to my mom and dad backstage with Sammy, I want to work in entertainment. So that's one story. The other that really stands out, at the Flamingo, Judy Garland was a headliner at the Flamingo. And Dad came to me and said, Bruce, Mom and I want to take you to see Judy Garland. At that time, because again, I was a young guy, 12 or 13 years old. I knew The Wizard of Oz and I was a big fan, but I had no idea what a treat I was in for that night. At the dinner shows at Las Vegas, at the Flamingo, unbelievable atmosphere, elegance. So anyway, I had never heard a voice like Judy Garland in my life. I mean, I'm getting chills right now just thinking of listening to Judy Garland, and I had never heard a voice like that in my life. So again,
she was a little lady with a very powerful voice.
Unbelievable, and you described her absolutely correctly. So again, we did visit her backstage, and when I visited Judy, I said, in all my years, I may be young, but I've never heard a voice like yours. And just compliment after compliment, because she just was so amazing. The other singer, because they took me to all the shows, but the one other that really stands out is Lena Horne. And Lena was such a class act. I know you love classic films like I do, and Lena was in some really big classic films. But again, that jazzy, cool way that she delivered songs, I'll never forget seeing Lena. And I have a date story. Now, this is a date story at the Flamingo, and I think you'll get a kick out of it. Now,
this should be interesting. Yes.
Yeah. We were mentioning maybe sometimes smaller stature women that have big voices. Well, Brenda Lee. Think of Brenda Lee when she had her 12-year birthday. She was headlining at Las Vegas, at the Flamingo Hotel. She was only
the youngest ever. I guess that was the youngest headliner ever anywhere.
Yeah. So my dad came up to me and he says, Bruce, do you know Brenda Lee? I said, of course, Jambalaya. And, I mentioned some of her hits at that time. So he said, well, Brenda is headlining at the Flamingo. We're having a pool party for her 12-year birthday. I want you to be her date. So I'm saying, Dad, you're kidding. I'm going to be Brenda Lee's date. So I showed up at the pool party and gave her a big hug. I'll never forget. She gave me a kiss on the cheek. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. It was Brenda Lee.
Oh, yes.
So the pool party was wonderful. So then we went into the Flamingo. And again, we were in the front row. And this was so sweet. And again, I'm getting chills thinking about that. Jambalaya was one of her really big hits. So with her microphone, she goes right up to our table and she says, Bruce Merrin, I have a special song I want to sing to you, and it's Jambalaya. And, she sang Jambalaya to me. But that voice, again, just like a Judy Garland, as you know, Bill, her voice was amazing. So those are a couple of the early Las Vegas stories that I remember. I saw, all of them. I'm Frank Sinatra, Liberace, Ella Fitzgerald. We could go on and on. Dean Martin. In the 50s. But the ones I mentioned are the ones that were really, really special. And that helped shape my life. Even though I was 12, 13 at the time, being surrounded with entertainment, that definitely had an effect. And I'm so thankful to Mom and Dad.
I can understand that. I think of one other singer who comes to mind, and I would imagine you heard her and maybe managed her, and that's Teresa Brewer, because I remember so well that Patti Page one time, in a tribute to the Songs of the 1950s, a television show, Patti Page introduced Teresa Brewer as the little lady with the big voice.
And you're right. I did work with Teresa Brewer, but she as well, you have great taste. What an amazing voice she had. And I was very, very fortunate to work with her. That's one of the great things about my business. I've got to work with people that I love. And fast forward, Celine Dion, I booked Celine Dion a number of times on the corporate arena. So to work with people that are so talented and gifted, that's something that's in my heart that I've always loved and treasured, that I had the ability to do that, Bill?
Yes, and I would underscore that ability to do that, because there are many people who would want to do that, but I'm sure there's a certain type of genuine approach that you make to someone who's a megastar to establish a relationship, because there's so many agents and booking people and uh, PR people who
Yeah.
are approaching them. And one of the things I noticed was in reading about you is that one of the keys was getting to know and to establish trust with their manager. Is that correct?
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. And it's funny, I'm seeing in the background behind my head that kind of pink album. That's Casey and the Sunshine Band. And I've worked with Casey for years and years and years. But in answer to your question, yes, you have to have the trust with the managers and the personal agents to those stars. I'm an agent as well, but very often I have to deal with other agents. So I've always felt that one of the assets that I have, I am genuinely humble. You know, I'm very humble because I'm very humble about my beginnings and my roots, and the ability and the respect to deal with people at that level. I feel that I'm a very humble person, and I know that the entertainers appreciate that. I've never been starstruck, but I've always been humble, and I believe also the spirituality that I have inside me. I think that really helps me as well, because when you use the word genuine, that's a really important trait. I don't care whether you're in the celebrity business or you work at IBM. If you have that trait, I think it goes a long, long way. So I just feel very blessed to have worked, not only with all the celebrities, but of course with the sports stars as well. So you hit the nail on the head, Bill.
Well, a related word that you and I both are hearing and the public is hearing constantly as a target for us is authentic or authenticity. And was it? I think it was Oscar Wilde who said, "Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken."
That's great. I love that. I have heard that, but you're a genius. No, you're a genius. But since we're talking about humble, the other big name celebrity, and you mentioned earlier, but I'll just share a story because this does touch my heart, was Elvis Presley. As you know, my very first job out of the UCLA Film School, thanks to my mom had recommended, why don't you try to get a job at MGM? And I was lucky, and I got a job at MGM working in the Thalberg building, which is the most famous building of all time at MGM. So long story short, the president of MGM comes up to me. I'm a rookie. I'm a young kid out of the film school. He says, "Bruce, how would you like to have lunch with Elvis Presley in the commissary? We have a brand new MGM film. It's called Elvis on Tour." And I said to him, "Oh my God, Elvis, when I, was younger in Las Vegas, he was my favorite entertainer." So I sat down in the commissary right next to Elvis. And by the way, Bill, one of the most handsome people I have ever seen, the most amazing smile that I've ever seen. But I sat down to Elvis and I said, "Elvis, I know that we're really going to get along. Both of us are mama's boys." And he just got the biggest kick because I'm a big mama's boy, and everybody knows he was a mama's boy
Yes, yes,
as
that was a
well.
well-known fact.
Exactly. So we really hit it off. And as a result of meeting Elvis there, I worked with Elvis the rest of his career on the TV specials. Here in Vegas, I probably went to at least 500 of his shows at the International. But he too, and this is amazing, of course, he's one of the biggest superstars of all time. When you talk about humble, the way that he treated everybody, whether he was on a movie set or just meeting people off stage, he was humble. He had that Southern charm, and people really, really love that. And just one thing I'll share, because you love music and you have great taste. He told me many times, of course, I love rock and roll. I'm sure you're a fan of rock and roll. He said, "Bruce, what I'm really most proud of are my gospel albums. My gospel
Yes,
albums,
yes.
those are my roots, and my spirituality." So anyway, he always brought up the gospel albums. And I'll tell you, if any of your people get any of the gospel albums by Elvis, they're in for a treat.
Oh, yes. Elvis, I've heard some of those. And of course, anything that he produced was magical. It's so great to hear that about him. And of course, many of us who see famous celebrities, and that's a redundancy, I know, but when we see celebrities, the question is constantly, what are they really like? What are they like off stage? What are they like when they're not performing and people are applauding? It's so refreshing to find those who are grateful for the success that they're having and who know that it's the people who make them successful, not just their talent. But you can't be a success without great support from people. And the best, in my opinion, the best stars are those who don't forget that and who act upon it.
I agree. And another trait that I'll add to Elvis and a lot of the others is generosity. He's the most generous person I've ever seen. On every movie, when the movie was done, he would get the most expensive gifts, not just for the producers and directors, everybody, the grips, the electricians, the makeup people. I had never seen that before. He was so generous. He wanted to thank everybody, that was involved with every film that he was involved in. And that always struck me, that he had such a heart of gold that, he didn't have to do that. And certainly there's many stars that don't, but he was so generous in thanking everybody when a film ended by giving very generous gifts, gold watches, or you name it, very expensive gifts. So that always impressed me a lot.
Yes, well, early in his career, he was giving away cars, luxury cars. And of course, that's a mark of a person that just places so high value, that it's not just their talent, but it's their human touch and their kindness. Bruce, you have hosted and you've been the public relations person for so many outstanding speakers, as I mentioned in the introduction, from practically every arena. You book top speakers. And in a few seconds, we're going to come back, and I want you to describe for us, please, what you have discovered, or maybe knew a long time ago, are the traits and the skills of the most effective speakers. We'll be back very shortly.
Do you wish you felt confident about giving speeches? Do you want to deal with difficult people constructively? And what about becoming more persuasive in sales? Then keep listening now to Dr. Bill Lampton. He spent 20 years in management, so he knows the communication skills you need for success. I urge you to call the Biz Communication Guy today for a no-cost but very valuable 30-minute discussion about your communication challenges. Call now, 678-316-4300. Again, that's 678-316-4300.
We're here with Bruce Merrin, the PR czar, I guess I can call him. On the Biz Communication Show, I'm your host, Bill Lampton. Bruce, before that short break, I mentioned that for more than 50 years, you have heard not only the singers and watched the dancers, but you've heard many, many outstanding speakers, and you have become the PR person for them. It was such a wonderful treat not too long ago when you introduced me to Monty Holm. And I had the privilege of interviewing him. I said that he was absolutely the embodiment of the Horatio Alger stories, a guy who slept on a concrete floor and then he was a millionaire by age 25. And yet he remained a wonderful guy with great service and faith. And you've heard so many terrific speakers. What would you say are the elements from your experience and your observation that give someone that extra aura or that extra appeal or the connection with the audience or really make them memorable?
Yeah, I'll be glad to answer. And it really goes back to think we're celebrating our 50-year anniversary right now, but it all started with Johnny Carson and with Michael Landon and I'm going to answer your question, but this is what I wanted to share. Johnny Carson invited me and Michael Landon to Johnny's home in Malibu. And remember, at this time, I had a PR firm. I never had a speakers bureau. Johnny gets out Cabernet Sauvignon. He salutes and says, cheers to me and Michael. He says, Johnny Carson says, Bruce, I have an idea. I think you should have a celebrity speakers bureau. And Johnny says, I'm going to be your first client. And then Michael says, I'm going to be your second client. So I said, Johnny, if you and Michael suggest it, I'm going to do it. So that night, remember, I had never booked any speakers. So that night I said, well, if I'm going to be starting a speakers bureau and I have you guys as clients, what are some recommendations? You guys are amazing behind the camera and you know, you're stars. What are some attributes that you look, if I'm to book a speaker, what are some of the attributes? So I want to share some of the things that they told me that night that I was having dinner with Johnny Carson and Michael Landon. Johnny says, first of all, when the speaker comes out, if they can get the audience to laugh in the first minute, immediately they'll have them in the palm of their hand. Get them to laugh. Secondly, if you can get the audience, if you can get them to touch their heart with a story, share some story at the beginning that'll touch their heart. So Johnny told me that. And then Michael went on to say the other thing with a speaker that I've seen, this is Michael speaking, he says, if you can have an ongoing theme, leave some things in their head that's like an ongoing theme. Like he said, for example, impact lives. If you have a theme of impact lives and you bring that up in your talk, you're giving a takeaway to the audience. So those were some of the early things before he had ever even booked one speaker. So that was really thanks to Johnny Carson and to Michael. And then from there, as you know, Jackie Robinson, Muhammad Ali became clients. And very early, because I was so lucky, I was booking the Wayne Dyers of the world. And, you know, I learned so much from the Wayne Dyers of the world, the Bob Proctors of the world, you know, some of the most legendary speakers in motivation, Jack Canfield. So I learned a lot from them by seeing how they performed. And by the way, they did all the same things that I just shared with you. They would always get the audience to laugh at the beginning. They'd always have some kind of story at the beginning to touch the heart of the audience. And they always had an ongoing theme. Now with Jack Canfield, you know, the biggest selling book series of all time was Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Oh, yes.
And he gets the audience laughing at the very beginning by showing slides of all the biggest publishers in the world, like Simon & Schuster and Random House, saying, Chicken Soup for the Soul, it'll never make it. It's no good. So he got the audience laughing, but then his theme was never hear from somebody else. Never let anybody tell you you can't do something. Erase the word can't. Look what I did with Chicken Soup for the Soul when everybody told me it was a bad idea, you know? So I continually over the years have learned from the clients that I book in the speaking arena, and I really consider that a gift.
One of the things that crossed my mind, and I don't know how often you've been asked this, but as you very well know, your life is almost a fantasy that walked and breathed every day. You've met fascinating people that most of us know only from afar. You've worked with them. You've had friendships with them. You've traveled with them. You've gotten to know their families, all the things that are quite uncommon with the rest of us. And so has anybody talked to you about writing a book about your memoirs?
Yeah, you're really kind. And I get asked that and suggested that all the time. And I really should. I'm so busy having fun booking my clients and doing public relations campaigns that I haven't done it yet. But absolutely. I mean, it's not a maybe. You maybe have heard this phrase, but I kind of like it. There's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and someday. Don't think someday. So it's not someday. I am absolutely going to write the book. But if you think of my very first year in business, starting with Elvis Presley and Michael Landon and Johnny Carson, and then Jackie Robinson and Muhammad Ali in my very first year. Obviously, the stories that I have over the years are amazing, and so yes, I mean, I absolutely no question. And of course, when we're talking about speakers, imagine how blessed that I've booked every past president of the U.S., beginning with President Reagan.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the answer is absolutely. I'm going to write a book, and I just flashed all the famous astronauts. I booked all of them. So yes, absolutely, I will write a book, and the memories that I have are cherished. They're really treasured.
Be a great story. When you talked about someday, you reminded me of Agmandino. I'm not sure whether you dealt with him or not, but I was very fond of some of his writings. And one of his sayings was that he'd looked at a lot of calendars, but he'd never seen someday as one of the days.
Exactly. No, exactly. And that's why I mentioned that. I can't even remember where I first heard that, but that's for the people that say, someday I'm going to,
Yes.
someday. But no, I absolutely will write a book. And my mom and dad, they both wrote books, several of them. So yes, I want to follow in those footsteps. And I think it would be very entertaining just because of all the amazing people that I've had the gift. I mean, again, something that's flashing, but it's good to share with you. The most incredible stand-up comic that I've ever booked and worked with was Robin Williams. I mean, Robin Williams is a genius. I've seen all of them. Working with Johnny Carson, I probably was at least 500 of the Johnny Carson shows. But Robin Williams was in a class on his own, as far as I'm concerned. And a quick story, but you'll get a kick out of this. So I'm working with Robin Williams, and I get a call from Bank of America. They say, we have a special surprise for an audience. We'd like to book Robin Williams. Would he consider showing up as Mrs. Doubtfire? It would be a surprise to the audience. I said, I'll be glad to ask Robin, but I said, I don't know that he's going to say yes. Well, believe it or not, Bill, Robin Williams said yes. So when the announcer announced to the audience, there was at least 5,000 people in the audience. We have a very special guest for you. The curtain opens, and out comes Mrs. Doubtfire. They knew immediately, that it was Robin Williams. And then he took off Mrs. Doubtfire and did one of the most amazing stand-up comic jobs that I've ever seen. But what a gift, Robin Williams. And again, I know you love films. When you look at some of the films that Robin Williams has done, like Dead Poets Society, Good Will Hunting, amazing actor as well, Bill?
You have been blessed with seeing the best, and as I say, you help their stars shine more brightly.
Well, I appreciate that.
That could be a slogan for you, because you do help the stars shine more brightly. Bruce, there's an old saying that time flies when you're having fun, and this has been and still is a great deal of fun, but I believe it's Johnny Carson who used to say, but the old clock on the wall is moving along.
You're absolutely right.
So would you like to share your contact information for those who would like to get in touch or learn more about your services?
No, you're very kind. Our website is fairly simple. It's Bruce Merrin's CelebritySpeakers.com. Bruce Merrin's CelebritySpeakers.com. On Facebook, it's Bruce Merrin. LinkedIn, Bruce Merrin. On Instagram, it's Bruce Merrin Speakers. But I'm always very kind in welcoming anybody that wants to talk to me. And this doesn't mean they got to pay money. I just, if I can, make it go forward and help people, then that's a gift to me.
That's a marvelous approach. Marvelous. Yeah. And now that and thank you for that, your contact information, I'm very happy to give my YouTube channel and this conversation with you. I like to call it a conversation instead of an interview. This conversation with you will appear on there. I've been very fortunate since 2007 producing videos, and the last 8 years this Biz Communication show, so that you don't have to just listen to my communication tips, but there are wonderful resources like Bruce, who you will want to hear my conversations with them. And then, of course, I invite you to go to my website. Since I'm the Biz Communication Guy, the website is logically bizcommunicationguy.com. I will welcome phone calls. And as Bruce said, no dollars involved initially for an exploratory call. I'd love to hear about your communication challenges and problems and see how I or someone qualified can assist you with them. I want to give thanks also to my co-producer of the show, Mike Stewart, based in Nashville. Mike has been working with me as a marketing and technology expert, him, not me, since 1997. And we all, any of us who are going to get anywhere, need to find those experts early on and stick with them. So Mike Stewart, that I've given his website there. And now, Bruce, we've had a great conversation, as I call it. And I want to know, how would you, in 30 seconds to a minute, how would you pull together and sort of as thoughts you'd like to leave with us?
Well, and that's funny. I go, well, I'm back to President Reagan. Well, what I'd like to share with everybody, and this goes back to Dr. Dyer, when I saw his first presentation and he got a standing ovation, I said, Dr. Dyer, you really impact my life. So I've used that term impact lives for decades. And what I'd like to share with everybody out there, every day, everybody who's watching us, if you can do one thing to impact a life, one day at a time, that's a gift. So my suggestion, impact lives every day.
That is a marvelous suggestion. I want to say to our viewers and listeners that Bruce and I have never met face to face. We've been in contact for a number of months, and I have such immense respect, not only for his professional achievements, but for the human touch which has come across in our conversation. And I know that's your reaction as well. God bless you, Bruce, for your splendid performances as a PR giant, but even more so as a genuine, authentic person that we talked about.
You are so kind. And as Elvis says, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks to those of you who have been with us on the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, inviting you to be with us again next week when I will host another superlative communicator, and we will benefit from that.